If you think your doctor only prescribes what's best for you, think again. Today, I'm going to talk about how the pharmaceutical industry manipulates research, hijacks medical guidelines, and quietly controls your healthcare without you or without even your doctor realizing it. By the end of this video, you'll know how drug companies use money and influence to steer science, one of my favorite topics. Why most clinical trials are not nearly as trustworthy as they may seem, and what you can do to protect yourself from being turned into a test subject with a copay. What's up, you guys? My name is Dr. Block Parker. I am a board-certified surgeon and truth teller and independent thinker. Let's go. Let's talk about who funds the research. Over 70% of all clinical drug trials are funded by the companies that make the drug. You know that? That's like letting a student grade their own final exam. Who the hell would do that? These companies design the study, select the outcomes that they want, and also the outcomes that they want to measure, of course, fund the research team, and own the data. So if the results don't look good, they bury the trial or spin the data in their favor. You'll never see the failed studies. You'll only see the breakthrough results that make it to press. That's really not science. That is marketing in a lab coat. How does the data get twisted, though? Here's a fun trick they use. Let's say a drug reduces the risk of heart attack from 2% to 1%, right? They'll publish that as a 50% risk reduction. Sounds amazing, right? But in real numbers, that is 1 out of 100 people that they've helped. And maybe 5 out of 100 will get nasty side effects. They play with relative risk, not absolute benefit, because it just sounds better. And most doctors don't have the time to dig into the stats. They just read the abstract, they see 50% reduction, and that's the end of it. Now multiply that by hundreds of drugs, thousands of doctors, and millions of prescriptions. And the machine keeps turning. The thing is that doctors believe we're immune to the influence, but we're not. We all are trained to read research papers, and so all of us believe that we are understanding the research papers correctly. But what happens in corporate America, right? You get around a board table, you argue about stuff. This guy believes one thing, this guy believes another. Somebody comes out on top, but usually there's a few people who are dissenting and thinking these guys are ridiculous. That's the wrong move. That's just what happens in business in general. Do you think that happens in medicine? Of course it does. This person reads a paper and thinks that it's one way. This person reads a paper and thinks it's another way. That's what happens in medicine. And also, when you're a part of a hospital, you go to board meetings or you go to conferences, and you have a conference once a week. You might have a trauma conference, you might have an oncology conference. What do? They look at the patient and they decide what to do with this patient. Not everybody agrees all the time the treatment for that patient. And so these things happen a lot in medicine. It's not like they don't happen, and it's not like people don't disagree with each other. But the thing is that it goes deeper than that. Doctors are trying to figure out the best way to treat a patient, and they believe that they're reading the research papers correctly. But what if it's deeper? What if the research papers are meant to trick doctors and influence doctors in a certain way? And meanwhile, doctors think that the research papers are truthful and they were done in a way that was the gold standard, but they're not. So let's talk about some of the other things that pharma companies do. They sponsor medical conferences, right? They pay for speakers, they pay for lunches, hotel stays, all that good stuff. A lot of this stuff you can't do anymore, but they figure out a way to do this. Fund medical schools and research labs. They even write the continuing education courses that doctors need to stay licensed. Pharmaceutical companies do this, right? Think about that. The people teaching your doctor about new treatments are paid by the companies selling the treatment. And no, the free pens and chicken salads are not the problem here. The problem is that the entire ecosystem is soaked in influence, and most of it's invisible. That is the problem, right? We don't know. Doctors don't even know. Your doctor might not even realize they're being manipulated. And that's exactly how the system is designed to work for the pharmaceutical companies. And that's why many doctors will argue for or against treatments, drugs, vaccinations, even though the research says, oh yes, this is safe, or oh no, this is the wrong treatment, or yes, everyone needs this drug. Because many doctors are woken up to the fact that our entire ecosystem is soaked in influence. And so these papers that are science may not be science. And that's what somebody who has been in the healthcare system for 20 plus years starts to realize. I know a lot of great doctors, young doctors, they want to save the world, but they're a little misguided in the way they think because they believe that all of these research papers are science. And in fact, we don't have to go very far to understand that they're not science all the time. See, we think medical guidelines are sacred and unbiased, but the people writing the guidelines for hypertension, cholesterol, diabetes, depression often have financial ties to the companies whose drugs make the list. And if a drug isn't on the guideline, insurance might not cover it, right? Doctors might get pressured not to use it, even though it might work really well. But patients might never hear about it. That's how pharma wins. They don't just sell drugs. They shape the entire medical narrative. From the research, the education, to the treatment plans, to the rules that govern what gets reimbursed. Everything soaked in influence. Here's a couple real examples about how medicine gets manipulated. Vioxx, supposedly a safer anti-inflammatory, right? Turned out to increase heart attack risk. Merck hid the data. Tens of thousands of people died from this. Antidepressants. Published data shows benefit, but internal data often shows the effect is barely better than placebo for mild to moderate depression. Opioids. I've talked about this in other videos. Purdue Pharma pushed OxyContin as a non-addictive pain medication. They funded fake studies, created a national narrative that this was the best drug for pain that has ever been created, and it's not addictive. What did they do? They created a national crisis. They got millions of people addicted to not only prescription opioids, but many of those patients that I saw would move from prescriptions because they couldn't get the prescriptions anymore to heroin, to fentanyl, to hard drugs on the street. This is a progression that many patients went through because they funded fake studies, completely fake. They made the entire healthcare industry think that this was a non-addictive pain medication. The problem is these aren't rare flukes. They're business models with human lives as collateral damage. And if you think they've stopped, I think you're a little crazy. They're just better at it now. They're better at hiding it now. So what can you do to protect yourself? Because honestly, most doctors don't have time to vet every study, right? You can't go to the lab and meet the people who did the study and figure out if they were telling the truth or not. And patients, they have less time, number one, but also they don't know how to decode science. So here's what I tell people. Ask your doctor, what are the alternatives? If they only recommend one brand name drug, ask why. Number two, ask who funded these studies. If it was the drug company itself, be at least skeptical, right? And number three, ask what's the absolute risk reduction? If they can't answer that, they're quoting headlines and not evidence. And number four, protect your environment. Health isn't just a pill. It's a food, it's sleep, it's movement, it's relationships, it's mindset. Because big pharma can't make money off of your push-ups, right? And the more you outsource your health to them, the more power they're going to take from you. Look, I'm not saying all pharmaceuticals are bad. Many are life-saving. But when the people funding the research, writing the guidelines, educating your doctor, and selling the drug are all the same company, you might have a problem. So here's the truth. Your doctor might be doing their best, but they're working inside a system that's rigged. So you have to be your own advocate. You have to ask questions, read the fine print, and never assume a prescription means it's the best option for you. Remember these words, risk-benefit ratio. Figure out what's the risk of this treatment and what's the benefit to you. If the risk is higher, don't take the treatment. If the benefit's higher, then you should probably take the treatment. Does that make sense? Because the problem is that the pharmaceutical industry has one goal, sell more drugs. It's your job to protect your health. And I'm here to help you do that. If you want more truth like this, the stuff nobody else will say out loud, doctors anyway, hit subscribe, like, share, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks a lot, you guys. See you next time.